What's up, Fanout Crew? Colby and Brian are back with a new movie in the MCU series. We're changing it up a little bit. Going to Phase 4, reviewing one of the newer films, Shang Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And we are joined by our good buddy, Jeremy Branch from Movies Are Terrible on YouTube and Twitch. Jeremy, how's it going, buddy? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Longtime fan, longtime listener, first time attendee on the channel, other than I appeared on the Twitch live stream that y'all did for pinball over at Brian's house. So glad to be back in some capacity, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Welcome back.
Brian, why don't you remind the people at home or wherever they're listening about how we do these movie reviews, and we'll get right to it.
All right, so we break down our scores into 5 different categories. So this is I guess Jeff rated something at a 0. Maybe you rated something at a 0, but it's a 0 to 5 scale of score. The categories are cinematography, cast performance, plot, rewatchability, and music score. Then we'll take those, average them together, and come up with an overall fan-out score.
Cool. It's been a while since we did one of these. Last one we did was Avengers, the end of Phase 1, so we're changing it up a little bit this time. We're just skipping ahead a little bit. We want to start doing some more newer content and stuff. We'll probably do Eternals next. Jeremy, since you're the new guy here, since you're the guest, why don't you kick us off, man? Let's get started with cinematography. What did you have for this one?
So with Marvel movies, there's a couple things that you got to consider with cinematography, right? Traditionally, when you think of cinematography, you think about the entire composition. A lot of times in Marvel movies, we're using a lot of green screens. However, I think we got to take into account that the composition itself really does, it's storyboarded out. It plays a lot to do with the director, but ultimately it's the cinematographer that captures a lot of this stuff. So that said, if you're in the final battle scene in Shang-Chi and Shang's facing off against his father on that kind of like black sooty little area in front of the gate, you understand that that's CGI, but at the same time, the actual way that it's shot, the angles, the perspective, all of that kind of stuff is carefully considered and crafted out ahead of time. So this movie has got some really strong stuff, and then it's got some things that are just kind of typical Marvel, flat, evenly lit stuff. And a lot of times that's to compensate the green screen. I will say, though, there's one scene in particular that has got standout cinematography, and maybe you guys can speak to this a little bit, but there's the scene on the scaffolding. And because the planks of wood are so narrow, it would be difficult for anybody but the 2 actors that are doing the martial arts cinematography, the choreography, excuse me, to be able to fit on these planks. But there's this really interesting use of the camera where it'll like be up on top of the platform, drop down through, swing around the outside of it. Like there's some really dynamic camera stuff going on, and it works extremely well. I know it's not all practical, but it's got a really practical look to it. And moments like that are so intricately mapped out, you can't help but respect it and remember that, like, yeah, this is a big budget studio movie. It might not have Chloe Zhao and her cinematographer like the Eternals did, but there's still some really cool technical stuff going on in here.
I love it, man. Yeah, so did you see the video from Corridor Crew about how they actually did that scaffolding scene? They had
no.
Dude, check it out. So good.
All right.
So good. Their use.
Does it undermine everything that I said, or am I still good?
No, you're
all right, cool.
You're like spot on. The
right,
way
good.
they blend practical and CGI in that scene is seamless.
Yeah, I think another standout scene was the bus fight towards the beginning of the film.
Absolutely.
That was just extremely well done, and it made me think back to some of the 90s and early 2000s like Jackie Chan films where it's just really cool, fighting and using the environment. It was really fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys mentioned those 2 scenes. The one that stood out for me other than those is the little fight that his parents have at the entrance of Ta Lo. I mean, dude, when she's doing her little wind and water dancing stuff, and
it's awesome.
They're spinning around and the camera's just zoomed in right on his face, and he's just so in awe of this woman, and there's no dialogue. at all, and the way that it's shot is just gorgeous. So, Jeremy, what was your actual score on this?
Oh yeah, that part. I'm gonna give the cinematography a 4. 4 out of 5.
Okay, Brian.
4.5.
Okay, and I'm at a 4.5 as well. This movie is just beautiful. I mean, the bus scene is really an amazing scene. Not only the choreography, but the technical skills to be able to pull off that scene, especially during times in which it was filmed and like COVID and stuff. It had to be very difficult to do that scene.
Yeah.
So I got to give them props for that one.
Yeah, I also just one of the things that stood out to me, I am infatuated with the CGI lions. Towards the end of the movie, like those things are just awesome. And I don't know, like as soon as they showed up on screen, me and my wife both were just like, "Holy crap, those are!"
I wish they had
perfect.
used them a little more, you know?
Yeah.
Because they're there and they're cool, but they have their kind of moments and stuff. But I guess they just didn't want to take away from the Great Protector. That dragon was awesome looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
All right. So overall, really good scores for cinematography. We're going to go ahead and move on to cast next. So, Brian, why don't you kick us off for this one?
So cast performance, we had a very, very good cast. A lot of, some new faces to Marvel too, which is always exciting. But, I'm probably going to butcher pronunciation on all of these, so I apologize in advance. But, is it Simu Lee or is it Simu Lee?
Simu Liu, right?
Yeah,
don't
don't put me in this.
Yeah, sorry for butchering the pronunciation.
I believe it's Simu Liu.
Okay. What Colby said. Anyways, he did great. He was believable. I also was extremely impressed with the bilingual, like, younger kid they had cast as young him, like being able to perform in multiple
Both of them.
languages.
There was two different ones.
Really,
they were both good.
So I thought that was good. Aquafina, I'm not typically a big fan of her. Like, she's been in some other movies. There's something in her voice that just grates on me. But overall, I mean, she was a cool character in this as Katie. I was really shocked and loved that they brought back Ben Kingsley. I still secretly think that he's the real Mandarin.
Ben Kingsley.
Yeah. I still secretly think that he's the real Mandarin, and all of the times I've rewatched this film with my wife, she keeps telling me to shut up because I keep trying to find loopholes. That
You're trying to find some kind of like crazy, like Charlie Day, like meme way of like connecting him to the real Mandarin. Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, and then also like I think I'm still in love with Michelle Yeoh. I'm really
She's
happy.
amazing.
Yeah, I'm really happy that she was in this and had a really cool standout fight. And part of the performance in this wasn't just the believable acting, but also the choreography and getting all of that to be believable with the style they chose, which was really good. But I think probably the best acting in this for me was actually, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, Shang-Chi's dad. There are a lot of
Tony Leung,
scenes where
I
he
believe.
doesn't even speak. His facial expression tells you everything you need to know. Like the fight scene you mentioned earlier when he's fighting his future wife. You can tell, like, 10 seconds into the fight, he's like, I love this woman.
Yeah.
Like, and you see the same thing whenever he sees his kids later on. After he's brought them back, he actually is, like, exuding happiness from being around his kids again, even though he's supposedly this, evil guy at the time.
Yeah, he sees so
I
much
think he
of
did
his
a
wife
fantastic job.
in both of his kids, especially Shang. When he takes the rings and stuff, you can tell he's like just totally a piece there.
Yeah.
He's really good. Sorry, actually, you didn't give your actual score yet before I get into it.
Oh, 4.5.
4.5. Okay. That's what I have as well. And you totally nailed it with my thoughts on Aquafina. I don't love her typically. She's one of those actors that has their role. Like she plays her role and it's the same role in every movie that she's in. But in this one, it actually fits really well. And part of the cast performance is not just the actors themselves, but the characters they're playing. I love Shang and Katie's like just friendly sort of relationship banter back and forth they have. It's great.
It's believable too.
Yeah, it totally is. Mandarin, I have as the second best villain in the MCU. Maybe.
Oh, wow.
And not just like villain, but just like villains don't have to all be just evil all the time. I mean, yeah, he's bad in this film, but you touched on it earlier, Brian. He just sort of he commands every scene that he's in. You know, and I don't know. I really like this cast. For me, the Ben Kingsley thing was kind of it's like, come on, dude, just let the fake Mandarin go, please. I'm so glad. Speaking of which,
Dude, he's
so
the real
glad
Mandarin.
Well, here, regardless, the real Mandarin is in this movie. Both of you can agree on that. We'll just disagree on who that is. But I'm glad that they have like finally given the Mandarin justice, because whatever that was in Iron Man 3 keeps me up at night sometimes. So
I thought the
funny.
Mandarin was good in this too, because his driving force, like after he kind of becomes a good guy and has a family and everything, his driving force on the evil things he's doing is he thinks he's saving his wife. Like,
Yeah.
it's
all
one of
villains
the most
think
like,
they're doing the right thing, you know?
right, and it's one of the more believable instances of a bad guy thinking they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
My first instinct was to be like, these actors don't have to do a whole lot of heavy lifting. But after listening to both of you talk about it, it's hard to deny the talent on screen, which is part of the cast of the thing, which is kind of what we're discussing here. We've got so many familiar faces. We've got so many iconic Asian actors that show up in this thing. In addition to having great cast members, they have good chemistry with each other, and that's super important. I agree with you guys. I think that the father, Zhu Wenwu, is a fantastic villain. There's that scene where he takes Shang on his like revenge mission. It's just such
That
a cool
was dope,
scene,
dude.
you know, as it's really good stuff. So I actually am a little bit higher on the performances than I initially thought. There are some really cool things in it. I like the fact that Ben Kingsley, I don't want to say redemption, but I think Marvel is very funny in the fact that they'll find things that maybe aren't super well received or maybe aren't super popular, and then they'll find a way to work them back into the fabric and make them vital again, right?
They're very
they
aware
did it with
of
the Dark
of
World.
the backlash. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. They did it with Ben Kingsley, and it is kind of like a redemption arc. So I really appreciate that they pay attention to what the fans are saying, and then are like, oh, well, then you're gonna love this, and then they go and make us enjoy it. So I really like this. Another thing I want to say, and this is kind of stretch as far as is it cast or not, because the choreography is so good, you have to give it up to the actors for going through the training and doing the actual choreography and the fight sequences. So that should get worked in as well.
The category is all about the performance too, you know, and not just the actual actors, but like their performance and the characters. So yeah, totally. The choreography in this is really good, much better than I expected for an MCU film.
Much better than we usually get from MCU films. I mean, there are the gold standard with your John Wicks and things like that, but outside of this very specific Keanu Reeves subgenre, this is some of the best action we've seen in a long time on the big screen.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we all had what was your actual score on that?
4.
4. Okay, cool. So we all had solid scores on that one. All right, so let's get on to the plot. I really enjoy the first half of this movie. Maybe even the first 2/3. The last act of the movie doesn't lose me by any means. It's not bad. It's just I really appreciated the smaller spectacle of the movie, and then in the end it does the traditional MCU CGI fest. I get it. You have to check those boxes. I'm not against it. I mean, it's beautifully shot and all that stuff. It's just I was really digging the whole sort of friendship between Katie and Shang Chi, and then the relationship between him and his father, him and his sister and his father. All that stuff was great. I really liked the sort of little hints we got, not hints, but like glimpses into Asian culture. You know, there's some little stuff there when he goes into that apartment. The camera pans down. He takes his shoes off. It's just a little kind of, you know, insight into that culture and stuff. And then, you know, the family aspect, all like when are you two gonna get married? All that sort of pressure. Like I really dug that. The plot kind of gets silly with the magic dragon and the Shangri-La place and all that stuff. But I mean, that's what you want to see. That's what that's the price of admission for this, you know? So my long-winded answer is I've got this as a 3.5. I don't have any problems with this plot. It's just I tend to steer more towards the more character-driven ones like Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame, that kind of stuff. Not to say that Endgame is a simple plot. I mean, it's goofy as hell too. But overall, this is a good story. So I got it as a 3.5.
I think like you said, with any superhero movie, we're not just trying to serve two masters. This is like a 4-quadrant movie. It's got to hit certain things in order to be big budget entertainment. So I don't know if it should get a pass for that, but we kind of have to expect that that's what's going to happen.
It's still an MCU movie, you know? So
yes, and I agree with what you said. And essentially, that the character stuff, the building up and the defining moment in the character's journey is the stuff that I always find the most interesting. And then the spectacle stuff at the end, I just find there's not a lot of stakes involved in a movie called Shang-Chi. In the very first outing, you know that the stakes just aren't going to be very high. You need multiple movies to kind of get to the point where maybe something bad could happen to your main character. But all that said, that's just kind of an expectation that you have of these movies. So as far as the linear structure of the story, I think it's a pretty straightforward origin story. I like that we are kind of hidden Shang-Chi's backstory until that pivotal bus scene. I think a lot of that stuff works really well. I think that there are some there are two in particular weird character about faces that just happen really freaking fast, and one of them is Shang's father. It's such a good relationship. All of that stuff works really well, and then just in a moment, in an instant, all of a sudden things go from they're trying to kill each other to everything's amends. I'm going to sacrifice my life for him. Again, it's kind of a symptom of a genre, and I don't know if we should give it a pass for that. I think on a plot, like just strictly plot based score, I'm going 3.5.
Yeah, one more thing that I forgot before Brian chimes in. I did like the fact that it was a little refreshing for me anyway that the son was not trying to avenge the father, that the son was actually taking on the father, you know, because we see so much of that redemption stuff, you know, where like Black Panther is trying to, you know, avenge his father in Civil War. And his arc is great in that movie, but it was nice to be able to see not a good father and son relationship, you know.
That's a good point.
So I did enjoy that. But yeah, so I enjoy the movie. The story does get a little, I'm not gonna say crazy, but we know what happens at the end. I just kind of really wanted that sort of tighter, more character-driven stuff. I really wanted to see more, like, sort of conflict between the children and the dad. But I get it. You know, there's physical conflict there, but I wanted to see more of a. I just wanted their story to have a little bit more gravitas.
That's a really good point, and I think by cutting out that big section of CGI Battle Fest, you could have really hunkered down and made that switch between Shang and his father feel more organic and more fleshed out. Not a bad movie. Didn't want to come off super hot on that. Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah. No. I think you and I are on the same page there. What do you got, Brian?
Real quick, so I don't forget. I'm shocked none of us remembered to mention Wong when we were talking about cast performance.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Good call.
Wong's one of those
really
guys,
refreshing.
Man. He's an OG. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah,
That dude
it was really refreshing
dude.
seeing like a different sort of aspect of his character in this. I won't go into that.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that a little bit because I mean this is obviously a spoiler review. So he and Abomination are just like friends and buddies now. What I mean, like I'm cool.
Yeah, it
with
looked
that.
like he was dropping him back off at the raft.
Well, he even mentioned they said something about like I don't remember the exact words, but he was like, "You're still pulling your punches" or something like that. Like he whispered to him was like, "Hey, you're not selling it enough" or something, right?
Yeah, something about selling.
Yeah, so I wonder what their deal is. Are they? I mean, is he just doing this for money, or is it all? I don't know. I wanted more of that underground fight stuff for sure. Like I was really digging that in the trailer. I was hoping that it was going to be kind of a like hidden Mortal Kombat type thing. Because in the most recent Mortal Kombat, we didn't get a tournament, so I was hoping maybe we'd get one in this movie. But
I wasn't in this one either.
Yeah.
No, and I think by the trailers we were thinking a little bit more that there would be more like cage fighting matches in it.
Yeah.
But to the actual theory at hand, I don't know. Like maybe Wong and Abomination have formed some sort of alliance because like what past connection do these two guys even have? But it seems like they are in cahoots with each other, conning this system and making it look like they're actual enemies, and then he's taking them back to the raft. But I don't know how do you get from Wong to Abomination?
Yeah. Well, whatever the connection is, I trust Kevin Feige to to do it right. So
I think that's part of what they were going for in this movie with him, is showing that Wong is kind of a weird dude that's just off doing whatever he wants to do because he can.
That's a good call.
So I think they were wanting us to be asking these questions. Maybe we'll find out more later. But back to plot. I'm a little higher than you guys on the plot. I'm at a 4. I really love just the world that they threw us into with this. I'm really big into the fantasy worlds and stuff. So that was just refreshing. I do have some nitpicky things that just didn't make sense to me though. Like when they show up at their mother's village, they're like, "Oh, by the way, we have this gift for you that I made." It's like, how did you know what size I wear for you to make my skin tight hero uniform?
That is the what I call the Man of Steel syndrome all over again. Oh, here's a 20,000-year-old ship. By the way, son, I made a suit for you. I hope it fits. But it's also like a movie, and we're analyzing the crap out of it at that point. But yeah, that kind of stuff drives me crazy. We need to make a video on the worst movie tropes, because that kind of stuff drives me crazy, dude.
Yeah, and so it just like little nitpicky stuff like that. I do agree with you guys that the movie does make a very big leap about 3/4 through when you go to this huge CG battle. It feels kind of out of place with what the other part of the movie was. It's not necessarily bad. There's not a very smooth transition. It's just, we're fighting demons and stuff.
Yeah, Jonathan summed it up best earlier when we were talking about it. He said that the last 20 minutes of the movie are totally different from what the previous 2 hours just prepared you for. And it doesn't mean it's not necessarily bad. It's just I would have liked to have seen. I mean, this place is supposed to be hidden. It would have been cooler if just a small group of people finds this hidden gate that he's trying to break her out of, and it was much more of a character driven. That's why Civil War just works for me, and I don't want to keep bringing Civil War up, but the last third of that movie is just 3 people just fighting each other over something personal. Like that would have worked much better than this huge. I love the dragon, I love the CGI with all the lions and stuff, but it's like I don't think it needed that, which I think Eternals suffered from as well in their battle, if you want to call it that. I don't even know what that was.
We'll save that for Eternals, but I agree with you. Like the end of this movie wasn't bad by any means. It just didn't fit with the rest of the movie. What I would have rather have seen is more of a just person versus person type battle. I was sort of hoping that in the last fight, maybe Shang Chi would have gotten control of 5 of the rings, and his dad kept 5, and they sort of dueled it out.
Well, that happens
for a minute,
but, but
not
I felt
for
like
long, though.
No, but it was sort of like really quick.
Yeah, I mean, like
okay, they belong to me now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like he just sort of immediately took them over, similar to what his mom showed she could do. Versus, I really wanted there to be more of a power struggle there, even if it wasn't with the dad. I thought we were going to get really some of it too with the assassin guy that he kept having run-ins with.
Let's talk about Death Dealer for a second. That is his name, right? Death Dealer, I think.
I don't remember.
He's all over the trailer.
Yeah,
and his part in the movie is the trailer, right? Like he's a complete bust. Like they made it seem like he was going to be like stalking him and like and fighting him this entire time, and he just goes out like a bitch, dude.
Cool costume. Cool
yeah,
costume.
yeah,
That's about what he is.
That's a toy seller. That's a Boba Fett right there.
Yes.
But yeah, going back to Shang-Chi versus Wenwu, I liked the little. You're right. It was very quick where they have 5 rings each and they're sort of like conflicting with each other. I would have liked to have seen a more, even conflict even more, where like maybe some of the rings that Shang has are getting pulled back to Wenwu, and then
Right.
like they're like repelling each other or like coming back to each other. Like maybe
there needed to be
the
a
rings
power struggle
the
there.
rings
There
are
was
clearly
never a struggle.
right.
It
The
just
rings are clearly,
happened.
I guess, sentient based on what shows up in the post-credit scene. Again, if you haven't seen the movie, like, why are you watching this? But I would have liked to have seen a little bit more conflict between the two of them. But again, we're nitpicking at this point. I don't want people to think that this movie is bad. I mean, I really enjoyed this movie.
This nitpicking and the plot is more or less me explaining why this isn't like a 5. It's, while it's really good and great, there's some areas that could have been better. Honestly, this whole, like, that last part of the movie, I would have rathered it end with them finding this village and then like the sequel be this sort of fantastical stuff with the dragons and whatnot. I think that would have made more sense.
That could have been interesting.
Because then they could have explored that.
His eyes
more,
are open to this world. It's just a little bit, and then it's sort of like the Matrix verse, and then the second one, like in the Matrix, he gets his eyes opened, and the second one, it's like all about the next iteration. That movie sucks.
This battle was like the scale of New York. Like, it was the scale of the Avengers New York fight. But we only have one hero here.
What did they call it? The Dweller in Darkness, the one who dwells in darkness, or whatever. I think that's what they called it. If that thing gets loose, I mean, Thanos ain't got nothing on him, dude.
Yeah.
So, I think we've talked about the plot enough. Actually, did you give your score? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was at a 4.
4. Okay, Brian, why don't you go ahead and just keep it going, and let's move on to the music score. What did you have for this one?
So music score, I admit I'm a little foggy on because the last time I watched the movie was when it came out on Disney Plus. So I do remember enjoying the music. There was some good original scoring. There was some fun songs they brought in. Kind of leaning into that a bit with the karaoke scenes were just really fun. So overall, I think the music choices were solid. I'm at a 4. I feel like if I could remember the music better, it would lean me a little higher. But given that I can't really remember any of the tunes,
yes. So that was my thing. Like, there's no iconic songs in this movie. The one thing I will say, I have it as a 3.5, so it's slightly lower than what you have. But the score in this is all over the place, not in a bad way. Like, there's some like rap, hip hop, dubstep, and then there's like calming Zen music at certain points. Like, whatever the song is fits the scene that it's in perfectly. Like it totally sets the mood for the scene that it's in. It's just because the styles are so different and polar opposites. I didn't really feel any like, iconic songs there. I have it as 3.5. Nothing wrong with it. Just when you're going against Alan Silvestri's Avengers theme, I mean, it's tough, man. It's tough. What do you got, Jeremy?
Yeah. I'm gonna go 4 with this one, and the reason why is a lot of what you said, Colby. I like the fact that they are experimenting with different styles of music in this thing. You definitely get the impression that they're gonna lean into the hip hop from the marketing of it, and in the movie, there's definitely scenes where hip hop is playing, and it's super cool. And then there is the bus scene, which is just an iconic top scene in the movie theater of the year type tier, awesome action sequence. And it's got like electronic music playing behind it during that scene. You've got your more sweeping, epic, traditional score music at the end during the battle sequence. And then, like you said, of course, because it's Far Eastern, you've got Eastern influence music in it. And I think it melds all of those things together really well. And I think that's kind of a microcosm of Asian American culture in the first place, is like this amalgam of, pulling from different influences. And I like the fact that they wore, the inspiration from hip hop on their sleeve in that kind of way. I thought that was super cool. To your point, and I think this is 100% valid, can't be understated. There's not one song on it that really jumps out as the memorable piece of music. The one that I'm thinking of right now is that left hook, right hook from the trailer.
I was just gonna say the trailer has a more iconic sound than the movie does, but that's
Which-
good. I mean, how long has that trailer been out? And we still remember that, you know. So
Yeah.
there's some credit there.
It's good marketing.
Yeah, you actually said the exact same stuff I was saying. You just did a little bit more eloquently than I did. I
Hey,
couldn't
man,
quite
that's
figure
what
out.
I get paid the big
I
bucks
couldn't
for.
quite figure out how I wanted to say it because it was all over the place. But I mean that like as a compliment. Like they were able to take totally different styles and mesh them together very well.
Yeah, like a good gumbo.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. Brian's favorite category, rewatchability. I'll go ahead and kick us off on this one. I have it as a 3.5. Rewatchability to me is very much based on a couple things. Fun factor, comedy. Actually, we haven't talked about the comedy yet. We've touched on it a little bit with Aquafina earlier, but this movie has a couple of pretty good one-liners, a couple of good parts, and it's mostly between Shang-Chi and Katie. But it's not as funny as Ragnarok. It's not as funny as
No.
Guardians. It's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be, but it's not as character driven as Civil War. It doesn't have the spectacle of Infinity War or Endgame. So it's like, to me, it's just not quite there. It's not as rewatchable as the best movies in the MCU, which is like, that's the worst thing you can say about a movie. It's not as rewatchable as Ragnarok. Like Ragnarok or Guardians, I can just have on anytime. Like I love those movies. They're so fun. This has a lot of fun parts. I just wish they would have committed to a style in this movie, because the last act is just so different than what I thought we were going to get. And I didn't hate it at all. It's just, man, I really wanted that tight character driven story, So I got 3.5.
I'll go with
Sure.
a 4 on this one. I'll go 4 on rewatchability. I think that there's a lot here to enjoy. If the music slaps and the cast has good chemistry, and in this sequence the big CGI battles aren't bad, but they're actually kind of cool because it's like for me on a rewatch, it's like a visual thing. I'm less interested in the storyline and the characters, and just like give me some
'cause you already
stuff
know.
on the
Yeah.
screen and I'll be good with that. So to watch this big kaiju battle at the end without having to really, worry about the consequence of it, I think there's a lot of fun stuff in this that give it a rewatch value.
That's fair.
Not my favorite MCU movie. I echo a lot of what you said, Colby. There are definitely others that are more rewatchable. I think I've seen Shang-Chi probably 3 to 5 times now. So like I've already rewatched it a little bit. So I can co-sign and endorse that it's a rewatchable movie.
Okay. I altered my score a little bit from what I initially thought, just kind of refreshing myself through the film. I'm at a 4.5, which is actually one of my higher like Marvel ratings for rewatchability. Not to say that this is one of my higher ratings overall. This movie is it is rewatchable for me. It's fun. It checks all the boxes with the comedy. I love martial arts films and the hand-to-hand combat aspect of things. I do like
That's true.
the
That
CGI
part never
battles at
gets
the
old.
end.
That
Yeah,
bus scene will
and-
never get old.
Yeah.
And there's enough there in the movie where I can enjoy it, whether I'm actually sitting down focused on it or as a background movie. And being able to watch the movie both ways is important to me. So I'm at a 4.5. I think my wife and I've probably watched this like 10 times now, if
Oh,
not
wow.
more. So yeah, I enjoy it. That was our last category.
Yeah. So what do we have? What do we have overall for all three of us? What are our averages? I think I'm definitely lowest, but not by choice. I mean, it just is what it is.
Both of you guys balanced out at 3.9. I'm
Oh,
at
wow.
4.3. And so that brought us to 4.0.
So if you're at 4.3, you have this rated higher than the original Iron Man, and that's fine. Does that surprise you?
I don't know. I can say that right now, if you asked me which of those two movies I'd want to go watch right now, probably Shang-Chi because it's newer, it's fresher in my mind.
Sure.
I've watched Iron Man probably 100 times. So I don't remember what I rated Iron Man, but I would say this is up there with it.
3.9 for me does not surprise me at all. That feels like right about where I ride with averages on Marvel movies is between about 7.5 and 9. Like that's the sweet spot.
Yeah,
and
me
to
too.
say an entire movie's catalog is between a 7, I said 7.5 to a 9. That's
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
3.25 to 4.5 or something.
This
like
is not
that.
My Friend Watches, Jeremy. God.
Yeah, I know. I got mixed up there for a second. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like just being in that kind of percentile for everything. And then, to Brian's point that he mentioned a minute ago, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I was just kind of thinking about when you said you gave it a 4, and now you're sitting here explaining why you didn't give it a 5. And that's kind of the nature of doing reviews. Of course,
Yeah.
you're going to kind of touch
What ruined
on
it for
the
you,
negative
you know?
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
However, I think all of us come across as being pretty big fans of this movie.
Yeah. Let's switch gears just for a second. So you said that you tend to, or like in the 7 to 9 range. Is there a 10 in the MCU?
I don't know that I don't know that anything is a 10, right?
I think there's a 9. I think there's a 9.5.
Movie.
I think there's a 9.5. I'm sure you
what
can
is
guess which one it is.
Let's
Brian
see.
knows.
Iron Man 3.
Is it Civil War?
It's Civil War. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
Civil War as the best movie in the MCU
Yeah.
personally.
I agree.
It's just so good, dude. It's just so good.
I agree. I don't know if I wouldn't say perfect 10, but yeah, maybe
Yeah.
to your point, maybe a 9.5.
I have Deadpool as a perfect 10, but that's not
wow.
that's not an MCU movie. We'll get into that too at some point. Maybe we'll do a Deadpool rewatch. God, I haven't seen that in forever.
It's a good watch.
Mm-hmm.
Got a lot of rewatchability, Brian.
Yeah, it does. It does. Deadpool's pretty high up there. I would say the closest thing to a perfect score for me in the MCU is Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's a damn good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that movie. I have that as a 9 on Jeremy's weird out of 10 scale. Like, what is that
Yeah.
about? Base 10. So yeah, we had a pretty good. Actually, well, hold on. Did we do what's our total average?
4.0.
4.0. Okay, so that would probably put Shang-Chi right at the oh god, I can't quite rate it A tier, but I can't give it a B tier either. This is a tough one. I mean, I'd be okay. I mean, I will allow you to put it in A tier, but it's just not. I think
I'm kind of surprised.
Jeremy's
that
there with me. It's not quite, man. Like to me, like Ragnarok, Black Panther, original Iron Man, Winter Soldier. Those are A tier movies, and I just don't have this quite on the same level. But it's higher than like Ant-Man. It's higher than the Thor movies. It's probably higher than Far From Home. Maybe not as high as Homecoming. Hopefully not as high as Far From Home.
Yeah.
No Way Home. I mean,
Hopefully
all
lower
the
than Far
Homes.
From Home.
God. Yeah. So I think this is a very good addition to the MCU. They tried some things in this movie that we hadn't seen before, but then they still went back to their old formula. And I feel like, yeah, Jeremy would call this formulaic. That's his word for these types of movies, and it's dead on. I would have liked to have seen a little more, a little less spectacle and a little more character moments in this one. But again, we're getting a Shang-Chi 2, which was just announced either today or yesterday. So that's cool. I'm excited about that.
I did not know that.
Thinking about the end credit scene too,
let's talk about that.
I'm actually a little confused on where they're going to go with that. Are the two of you familiar with, in the comics at least, where the rings originate from?
I know I don't know the specifics. I used to. It's been so long, but I just I know their extraterrestrial origin, all that stuff.
Yeah. So Fin Fang Foom.
Yeah.
Which they chose not to bring into the MCU because the name has some racist stuff to it. Which makes sense. So anyways, Fin Fang Foom is an extraterrestrial dragon alien thing. the rings belong to him originally. And
Yeah,
so,
that's right. Okay. I knew he was
so
involved.
the rumors at the beginning about him finding it in a crash site or a buried tomb alludes to that race may still actually exist, and we do get a dragon in the movie, even though it's not the same style dragon that Fin Fang Foom was.
It's more of
So
an
I'm
homage to
curious,
him.
when they say it's calling out, is it actually calling out to this dragon species, or is it calling out to something else?
Interesting. I see, and that's weird because normally I would be super excited for stuff like that, but like leave the cosmic stuff to Guardians and Thor and eventually Adam Warlock. Like I'm much more interested in his sister taking over the Ten Rings. Like that's what I want to see. Like we don't, not everything has to be this huge cosmic galactic spectacle. Small stories can still be good and still have stakes.
And the interesting thing with that too is thinking about like the terrorist and crime organizations that are now ran by women in the MCU. Because
with the chick from Seinfeld, Val? Yeah, I can't. She has like eight.
Yeah, Val.
Yeah,
and
she has like
then,
8 names.
The group from Madripoor, was it the Hand?
Oh yeah,
I can't
Power
think of
Broker.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
that,
like,
you know what? I hadn't even put that together. That's interesting.
yeah. So
And
like
they were doing it kind of quietly too.
yeah. So all of the like villain super groups are all led by women now.
Interesting.
Just
Which
like
is
real
weird.
life.
I don't know if they intended to do that or not, but I didn't hear what you said.
I said just like real life.
Oh,
Women, am I right?
So anyway,
Not here to defend themselves, am I right?
So Jeremy, now that you're on a roll, why don't you let the people at home know where they can find you, man?
Oh boy, you guys, if you want to know what I'm up to, come on by.
no one can
Movies
see the
are terrible.
dislike counts now.
No, correct. Luckily for you guys. Check out Movies Are Terrible on YouTube, Jeremy B. Terrible on Instagram, and yeah, that's gonna do it for me, folks. Thanks for having me, guys.
You're on Twitch too, right?
And I'm on Twitch. Check out Movies Are Terrible on Twitch.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out with us for this one, and for Shang Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Really good addition to the MCU. Really excited to see kind of where they take this story. And like and subscribe, and let us know in the comments kind of what you thought about this movie. As always, fan out and be terrible. See you guys
Later.
Sweet.